How's it going, everybody? I'll say good morning because here it's morning time. Like, I've been awake for about an hour, maybe. And the term awake is questionable. I've been eyes open for an hour, but I've got a lot of work to do today, so I've got to jump right into getting busy making some St. John's wort oil. And then maybe you watched my video where I made a tincture of St. John's wort, or maybe you've watched a video of me meeting St. John's wort in the wild. But now you're going to see me make St. John's wort oil. And again, like in those other videos, I mentioned that it's really important that we are using fresh plant matter here. And now in my other oil infusion videos, you'll see me talk about I prefer to use very well wilted or dried plant matter. But with St. John's wort, it's important that you use her fresh. In fact, I only allow her to wilt overnight. And I just left her right in the same basket, and really it's just getting a small amount of moisture off of the plant, because the thing is, we're going to be adding in oil, and oil plus water equals bacterial growth. So it's a little trickier, but it's doable. You're smart enough to manage this. You are. Let me take a drink here. Okay. This is my morning nettle infusion. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get a jar that we're pretty sure we can fill up all the way. Now, I, unlike a lot of other herbalists, don't prefer to use solid blooms in my oil. Meaning, like, a lot of people will go through the effort of, like, they would take this plant, this St. John's wort bloom, and they would only cut in the flower. Now, you can do that, and you'll probably see me go through here, and I'm going to be, like, cutting off the tips of the flower, but not, like, you know, there's still, see, I'm cutting right there, there's still a little bit of plant matter in there. And that's because I personally feel from my own experience that St. John's wort oil is more effective when she also has some stem and leaf in there. It's, you know, whole plant medicine, versus just trying to catch the Hypericum, which is, and you're like, what in the world is that Latin word she just said, which I think I actually said right this time. I always say Latin words wrong. You can take a St. John's wort bloom, and this is one of the ways that you can ID that she's actually who she is. You're like, I'm pretty sure this is St. John's wort, but I'd like to be 100% positive. And so you can take these blooms, and so I want you to see the color of my fingers before. They're just plain old fingers. And then I'm going to roll up, then I'm going to smash this bloom between my fingers really well. And in doing that, check it out, purple, like a purplish red, and so you really just get this big gush on your fingers. That's really, there's a good one right there. She had a lot in her. See, and now my fingers are purple. And that's the color you see when you make your infused oils. Like, check it out. This tincture is still sitting here because I was exhausted last night, that I made yesterday with you guys. Look how red she is. And so we are, you know, a lot of people are wanting to catch that color, and that is a good indication. But I see a lot of people go super overboard with just the blooms, and while I think that oil is still good, I just personally find when I cut off a good decent amount of stem in there too, and leaf, I'm finding her to be more effective. And then plus, if maybe you live somewhere where you do have St. John's wort because she's invasive but she's not prophyllic, and you're like, but I want to make a batch of oil but I've only got this small patch, well, you can go ahead and use the whole plant. It's not gonna hurt anything. You just won't get that super bright red oil, and some of that's misleading too, because a lot of people like to use olive oil, and if you've probably never taken the time to take olive oil out of the bottle and look at her, but she's already in like I guess you would say like the red-brown color spectrum. So when those oils look like neon red from afar, and they definitely are red, it's important to understand that when you're using olive oil, that color is enhanced because you're kind of just like adding more color to a color that already exists versus I'm going to be using avocado oil because I really like how fatty she is. She's essentially clear. So yeah, anyhow, I'm just going to come in here and I'm just going to trim up enough that there is, you know, mostly blooms in here, but also a good amount of stem and leaf too. They have decided to completely redo our tiny country road outside. Didn't know anything about it until about 20 minutes ago when there was like a massive gravel truck parked outside of our yard. Well, our yard being like an acre. And I was like, okay. And they're like, oh, we're chip sealing. I'm like, oh, great. So I'm gonna smell asphalt all summer. But, you know. So, anyhow, if you hear construction trucks in the background, that's what's going on. So I'm just going to go through and I'm going to fill up my jar. Now, externally, St. John's wort is generally used for pain relief. Like if you've got sore, tired muscles, that kind of deal. If you have got a sunburn, she's great for healing that up. And actually, while a lot of people will tell you that St. John's wort makes you photosensitive, the fact is that's usually only the case if you're working with dried plant matter. I believe that she's poisonous in that form. A lot of herbalists believe so. And that the only safe way to use St. John's wort on or around your body is with a tincture made from fresh plant matter or an oil infusion made from fresh plant matter. Basically, however you're going to work with her, she needs to be fresh. I wouldn't drink a tea or anything like that. But another thing that she's really, really awesome at, and I use her quite a lot for, is repressing the HPV virus, HSV kind of stuff. But, you know, and oh geez, what is it? HVS for shingles. So shingles and herpes and cold sores, oh my. She's really great at repressing those even externally. So like if you were to make yourself this oil, and then you were to just every day as your part of your self-care when you get out of the shower, if you have herpes down below, just put some oil on, like a body oil, and then that way if you do get an outbreak, they're generally less severe, and if you keep putting the oil on during an outbreak, they will generally heal quicker. Now I do have a form of herpes on my lip. Everybody calls them cold sores, but you know they're in the same family, and I'm just now getting over one, and by getting over one I mean like 4 days ago, I felt that tingle. You know, that like tingle, you're like, oh, I feel it on my lip. And so I ran and I grabbed my my stress sore balm, which is just where you make, you're going to make a salve or a balm out of this infused oil you're going to make. And then you can just apply that. You can use that down below too. People just tend to like just an oil for down below because it absorbs quicker, you know, versus a salve is where you thicken with beeswax or the like, and it tends to hold the plant matter in place longer. But anyhow, so I used to get really, really bad cold sores when I was a kid. Like stay home from school because my whole lip was a big sore, you know, and they get filled with the liquid. And now whenever I use, as long as I am on top of and not super stressed out, drinking my nettle infusion, taking care of myself, I really only get them on the rarest occasions, and they never go past the red bump stage. Like you can kind of see where it's on my lip a little bit still, but before using my stress sore balm or using, you know, infused St. John's wort oil or any of that stuff, or sometimes I'll put the tincture right on it too, it would have turned into a huge mess, gone halfway up my lip, and would take weeks and weeks and weeks to heal. At this point, it's just a bunch of skin that's healing on my lip. It's not sore anymore. It's not cracking when I smile. You know, it's not any of that stuff. So she's pretty awesome at that. But people have also used her to help with shingles outbreaks. And so she's pretty great for that. But you can also use her for mild sunblock. Look how white I am. I burn really easy. And one of the ways that I keep myself from burning really badly, other than like using real sunblock if I know I'm really going to be out there, is to use St. John's wort oil. And she's great for it. I usually do that if I'm just going to be like out in the garden for a few hours, or I'm not like anywhere where the water's reflecting. I would say she's just like, you know, she's a really mild SPF, but she can be great for that. So she has a lot of attributes to her that are pretty handy, and she's an invasive plant. So if you're out there harvesting her, and well, she's an invasive plant in most countries. Definitely in the United States and most places. So when you're out there harvesting her, and she is an invasive plant, you are helping your bioregion. Here she really hurts our wildlife, particularly our bighorn sheep. But she's also like the bane of any like sheep farmer or anything, or you know, sheep rancher, because when they eat it, they can't digest it, and it gives them like all these neurological problems. So by me going out and harvesting as much as possible, I'm actually helping my environment and making good medicine at the same time. So anyhow, you could definitely like do this faster. I'm just jabbering at the same time, you know. I guess I could put my basket on the side so I could see what I'm doing. So you can make yourself a salve, a body oil, a lip balm. You don't have to have herpes to be making this oil. Because she's really great for like sore muscles, sore backs, just like calming down. She can heal up wounds decently too. You can combine this oil with other things. You know, you could like make yourself, like maybe you made that arnica oil. You could make a St. John's an arnica balm. That'd be great for pain relief. She's great for nerve repair, like on like skin issues. She's pretty good for that. Sometimes I use her in, say, like my breast massage oils. That way she can help with sensitivity issues, whether you're too sensitive or not sensitive enough. She's all around just an amazing ally. And I feel like people, they know her as like the plant that helps with depression, and she can do that internally. She can definitely like uplift your mood, but I feel like she's overlooked for a lot of other really cool attributes that she has. So I'm almost to the top here. Now, when you're working with fresh plant matter like this, there are a few different steps than my other oil infusion. A lot of people like to take these jars after they fill them up with their St. John's wort, their fresh St. John's wort, and they like to stick it in the sun. I know it goes red really quick and that's really pretty, but please don't do that. Please, please don't stick anything that you're making in the sun. The sun's job, out of all, she has a lot of jobs. The sun has a lot of jobs, but one of her main jobs is, well, one of her important jobs, maybe not her main job. Her main job is keeping our planet warm. But she's a decomposer, meaning she tells things that are dead to start breaking down. She breaks them down. Like you ever seen like you're out hiking around and you come across an animal bone, you know, like a deer bone or a cow bone or antlers or something like that, and it's been bleached white from the sun. She has sat there and beat down, and it's not just white because it like bleached it. It's because she's broken down all of like the minerals, and she's working on breaking down the calcium, and she's working on eroding away. And of course with that there's like weather involved and stuff too. But when we sit our oils in front of, in the sun, we sit our plant allies in the sun, she's going to break down the medicinal and mineral content. And yeah, you get some really pretty color really quickly, but that's just instant gratification. What you really want to do when you're making these oils is take them and sit them in a cool, dark place for 6 weeks. Now, the thing is, also when you're sitting her in the sun, that heat, So this is already in so many ways a recipe for disaster. It's not like, you know, and if you do it right, it's fine, but like we're going to be adding oil to this, and oil plus water equals bacterial growth. Oil plus water plus light plus heat equals bacterial explosion, because that bacteria is going to thrive in the warmer conditions, and that bacteria is going to thrive having light. So we're going to fill this with oil, and I'm going to sit it in a cool, dark place for no longer than 6 weeks. You can't go longer than 6 weeks. And I'm going to check it pretty much every 2 or 3 days, even daily if you're in a really warm environment, to make sure that there's no mold occurring. Now, if mold occurs just on the top, generally you can skim that off, and then like if you just get like a film, you can skim that off and then strain her. However, if you start seeing mold all throughout your jar, it's done for. You can't use it. You don't want to be rubbing that on your skin. And so if you live in like a crazy warm environment, there's another thing that you could do that would help you get around the mold issues, and that would be to stick it in your fridge. Now, if you stick it in your fridge, you can usually have it sit for more than 6 weeks. You can usually get away with like 8 to 10 weeks, but still be keeping an eye on her. Now, most of the time when I see St. John's wort go bad in oil, it's because people aren't keeping her cool enough. Now, there are some other plants that, like, if you wanted to make like a fresh yarrow infused oil, she works pretty good because she actually kills gram-positive bacteria on contact. So that's pretty cool. But, and that random fact, I guess, just wanted to jump out of my head. But most plants I prefer to work with wilted because of that whole, okay, so like, these plants, if we use, fresh plants for infusions, within the first 6 weeks they are stronger quicker. However, when you use dried plant matter, when it's applicable, and remember that St. John's wort is not one that you can use dried plant matter with, but like other, like let's say like calendula for example, she will make a quicker oil that's pretty strong in the first 6 weeks of infusing her from fresh. However, if you use dried and you let that infuse for 10, 12, 13 weeks, you will end up with a really, really nice, strong oil that you couldn't get from using fresh plant matter, because you have to really strain by that 6-week period or you're going to be coming into mold issues. And so that's one thing that I find really interesting, and it's just from my own personal experience. There's definitely going to be people who don't agree with me, but that's just what I like to do. But unfortunately, St. John's wort isn't one that we can do that way, but maybe if you use the fridge, you can get a little longer than 6 weeks. So after that 6 weeks, and mark it on your phone, mark it on a calendar, be paying attention to her, like keep an eye on her, you're going to strain her out. And then after that, I would still suggest keeping it in a cool, dark place. Make sure that your bottle is a dark one. If you're putting it into bottles, like make sure you're using the amber brown ones, because this oil can still go rancid on you. So sometimes, most of the time when I'm done straining, because I live in the high mountain desert, it's already like 92 degrees out, it's only like 8 a.m. I keep these oils in the fridge, because even with air conditioning going in my old house, you just can't, you need to keep these oils cool and in a dark place. So anyhow, and then filling up to the top is pretty important of whatever size jar you're working with, because now you guys have probably heard me talk about oxidation before. Where like if you leave space in the jar for oxygen, it can cause oxidation. And normally that just means that it can make your tincture go a little brown color, or your oil go a little darker looking. It's kind of like how when you take a banana out of its skin, it'll go brown, or if you cut an apple, it'll go brown from the oil, from the air exposure. But when you're using a fresh plant, that's really problematic, because one of the things we're counting on here is like not having air present. Meaning, so oil plus fresh plant matter, so oil plus water already equals bacterial growth. Oil plus water plus air lets the bacteria grow even more, because, you know, it's got air, it's got something to breathe, so we're trying to like suffocate any bacteria here. So if you did that, if you didn't fill your jar up all the way and then you sat it in the sun, odds are good your oil's going to go rancid. And now you're like, how do I tell that my oil has gone rancid? Because rancid isn't quite the same as, like, you can have like mold in your jar and not smell it. Rancid is when the oil itself has gone off. And that's actually one of the reasons that I really don't like to use olive oil. I personally find that, especially when you're using fresh or wilted plant matter, that the olive oil goes rancid quickly, and it's just going to smell nasty. It's going to smell pungent. It's going to smell like spoiled food, because these oils are a food. And so definitely when you're checking your oil for mold, when you're getting in here and looking around, I also want you to take the cap off, and I want you to smell her, because trust your nose. And that's also one of the reasons why like essential oils are really problematic when people put them in salves and infused oils, because those volatile oils, the smell is so strong, like to the point where it's like literally doing damage to your olfactory nerves, which is how you smell things, that you won't smell if it's gone rancid. You know, and using rancid oil is a real problem, because you can, you know, if you feel like getting a staph or MRSA or all these other kind of horrendous skin issues. Now, I don't want you to be afraid hearing this stuff. It's just, be aware. You know, it's not the end of the world, and you can smell. You're smart enough to know what something, when it doesn't smell right. If it doesn't smell right to you, trust yourself. And then of course you can always ask somebody else. If you're like, I'm really just not sure if that smells bad or not, ask somebody else. Be like, hey, smell this. Don't ask them if it smells bad. Just say, hey, smell this. And if they go, oh God, their natural reaction is telling you the truth, you know, because you're not like putting that seed in your mind, in their mind, to tell you, yes, that does smell bad, no, it doesn't smell bad. They're just going to give you an instant human reaction. So anyhow, those are things that are important to know when you're making fresh plant oil infusions, you know, and so, and again, St. John's Wort is, I know I'm being a broken record here because I'm half asleep, is one plant that really 100% has to be made with fresh plant matter. So yeah, so I've got her pretty much filled up to the point that I want her to be filled up to. And you can see that, you know, I'm not solid blooms like a lot of other herbalists. I am, you know, it's like a 50-50 mix at this point, because I'm trimming off. So now I should have had this open before. I'm gonna put my oil in her. I really like avocado oil because, for one, she has a tendency not to go rancid. For two, she's very rich and fatty, meaning, our bodies will drink this oil in deeply, because they're like, oh, fats, healthy fats, that's what I want. And so they're going to, your skin's going to pull this in deeper. The more fat, the more your body craves it, the more it pulls it in, and then because the oil has been infused with the medicinal properties of the plant, the deeper it's going to get into your body. So like we're kind of tricking our body to get the medicine to where we need it. And these little bottles, usually I get the bigger bottles, but the company I order from only had the little bottles available. So it takes me 4 or 5 bottles to fill a half-gallon jar versus just the 2. But I use avocado oil in some form in almost all of the medicines I make. She is a bit more spendy than olive oil, that's for sure. But I just feel like she makes better medicine. I really do. I I just like her. I like her a lot. I like the way she soaks into our skin quickly, not making us feel greasy. I like the way that she is really great for skin health. I like avocados in general, so I might be biased. But you can usually go to like a discount store and find the same quality oils that you would find in your like normal store or from online, and usually the only thing that's wrong is there's been like a misprint on the label or something like that, so they can't sell it in a normal store. Or you can ask your store, your local store that might carry an oil you want to try if you start needing more than a bottle or two, to get bulk ordered in, you know, like you're ordering a case, not just one, and generally you end up getting it a few bucks cheaper per bottle that way. So I have filled her basically to the brim. When you do that, it's important to understand that this bottle will leak. So sit it on top of a towel, on top of a plate, on something that you don't care gets stained, because they just kind of seep out. But I'd rather have her do that than have air in there. So now I'm just going to put the cap on, and I am going to fill out a label, which is this thing that you saw that didn't get peeled off, but they wash off. But you know, sometimes we have to go through this whole effort of peeling them off, so it's easier just to put it over it. So I make my own labels. I buy these little Avery address labels from, you know, like Wally World or anywhere like that. And when you do that, you get free access to their label design. So I go in there and I just make it say things like what is it? Like it talks about like, you know, is it tincture, is it honey, is it oil infusion, is it other, date began, is it wildcrafted, store-bought, is it a mix, and then I put in, you know, the ounces and if that applies, and what it is, and, you know, the decant date, which means like 6 weeks from now when I need to strain her, product name, and if it's wildcrafted, where I got it from. But you can just use a piece of masking tape. You don't have to make it this complicated. For me, that's because I'm making batch numbers, and I have to like keep track of like everything I make. But just label it. Make sure you label it with a began date and when it needs to be extracted. So I'm just going to put on here St. John's wort. And I'm going to put avocado oil. Now, if you're working with oils, like when I'm making a tincture, it's almost always 100 proof vodka. So, like, if I spaced putting on there what alcohol I used, I could be like, that's vodka. Like, 99% is vodka. But if you're using different oils and you don't write down what oil you're using and you intend to offer this to people or somebody, that can be problematic because you need to know, like, maybe somebody isn't allergic to avocado oil, but maybe they are allergic to coconut oil. Maybe they are. So, like, just make sure you write down what oil you used. Even if you don't think you're going to sell it, you might gift it to somebody. Somebody might have a reaction. You need to know what's in this. And then when I say, you know, it's wildcrafted, it's oil infusion, 7, 12, put the date on there, and then I will do the actual math in my head. That's 6 weeks from now. And then I will put where I got it from. And then I will stick my label on the jar. And just like that. I gotta go back in there and put the when to decant it date because I can't Rain Man the exact day for 6 weeks from now. But anyhow, that's it. So it sounded probably more complicated than I made it because I'm talking and stuff. But basically, you're just putting your fresh St. John's wort blooms with some stem and leaf intact into a jar, pouring the oil you prefer to use over top all the way to the top. You are then going to sit this in a cool, dark place for no longer than 6 weeks, making sure that you're checking it at least every other day for mold. Give it a good shake that kind of helps it, you know, get going and move around, and make sure that you're smelling it to see that it's not gone rancid. After that, you're just going to strain it, and you can either, if you turn it into a salve or a balm, meaning you thicken it with wax, you don't really have to worry about it going rancid because the wax like stabilizes it. But if you're leaving it in an oil state, make sure that you're storing it in a cool, dark place, maybe even in your fridge. So that's how you make a St. John's wort infused oil. Okay, so if you like my videos, if you like hearing me ramble, if you like what I'm all about, please take a moment to subscribe to my channel, turn on notifications so you know when I do post, and then like and comment, because that helps other people find me, and it also helps me know that I'm not alone on here and just talking to nobody. I do interact, I do make an effort to reply back. Also, come find me on Instagram. I'm over there daily. For the most part, I'm really active over there. I put out as much free content as possible. There's all kinds of really neat things saved over there. And then find me in my website. Like, you can learn more about me there and the other things I offer and other ways to interact with me. And you can find all that by checking out my bio here in YouTube. So, thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time, okay? Bye!